to take this with me. Standing up in Tadasana. So the mountain posture. And in the mountain posture, we can have arms by our sides, head up really tall, breathing through the nose. Feet can be apart or together, but if they're apart, they should be level. That's important. And straight away, I find myself moving my feet. I'm tuning out to tune in, right? So you tune out of whatever you were doing before. Even if you were getting ready for this, and you tune in to this. So movements, so for me, I'm not saying this is the case for you. Maybe a different movement does it for you, but for me, lifting up the inner foot and then the other inner foot, like that. Of course, I'm massaging the myofascia throughout the body, the calf muscles, the hamstring muscles. I won't list all the muscles, but through the whole back chain, they get kind of massaged. They get stirred like a porridge in a pot. Bring your hands to the heart as well. So this is called Tadasana Mascara. And of course, movement might still be there if it's part of your tuning in. I often reference my old granddad, Stanley Slater, who used to live in Wimbledon Park in London, because I've got both of his old radios. I'm very fortunate to have those. Lovely old Roberts radio, one of them is. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms diagonally down. So you're kind of using your body movements like a radio dial. Raise your arms up when you're ready. Good job. Light tone in that tum. Make sure the roots of the neck, we're talking the trapezius muscle. So the trapezius muscle runs from your skull, down your neck, out to the lateral third of your collarbones. See if you can comprehend that sort of viscerally. And then back down to the bottom of the ribs. So it makes a trapezoid shape. That's why it's called the trapezius. Huh? It's the most superficial muscle. And we want it to flow. Most superficial muscle on the back, that is. We want it to flow. So movements of the head that keep a flowing sensation through the neck are very, very useful. Then a big circle to release. You did it. Hands to heart. Take deep, honest breaths. Keep loose in any way that helps you to keep loose, like moving forwards, backwards, whatever helps. And then when you're ready, raise up the heel of one foot and just loosen off in any way that you can. Now, when you're ready, we're going to lift the leg, hold the leg, pull the leg up and out, and you might need to counterbalance. You can use a chair or a wall, or or just ride the waves. That's fine too. So sometimes stretching your other arm out can be useful. We still want the trapezius, so skull through neck, through lateral third of collarbones, down to the middle spine. We still want that area to be light and flowing. Okay. You didn't notice I nearly lost balance there, did you? Oh, good. Okay, leg forwards, down, and then everyone takes a deep breath, not least myself, but you too, us all, our little community. So take a few deep breaths. So they come and go. So flow, vahi, flow. It's an important principle. Go ahead and raise up your other leg if you're ready, but stay in touch with flow, with the relaxation of flow, which is free of this condition known as upadana. Upadana means reaching out, right? So free flow breath. And then when you're ready, raise the leg, take hold, breathe through your nose. We've got a few joining us. Welcome those just coming in. And then pull the leg up and out. And again, you might want to counterbalance with your other arm. I quite like palm up. To do with the upper fibers of the trapezius, I like that. Breath is everything. Eyes are soft. The yogini is playful, or the yogin. This is the nominative singular in the masculine or feminine. Yogin. Well, the yogin's not, actually it's in the neutra, so it's not masculine or feminine. but yogini is feminine. And breathing easy. Okay. Good job. Leg back, forwards again. Loosen off any way that you can. So you're staying nice and loose and nice and easy. Now we're going to try something else exciting. I was going to say it gets you out of the house, but well, it doesn't. It keeps you in the house, which is nice because it's cold and dark outside. So now we're going to reach and see if we can hold our big toe with our index finger, middle finger, and thumb, which again, you can use a chair or you can just ride the waves and just have a go. It's always good opportunity to have a lightness around ourselves, a super lovely quality, isn't it? To not take ourselves too seriously about anything at all. If you want, you can pull the leg up and out. Again, there could be the counterbalancing. So it's pretty much the same as what we did before, except we're attempting to hold the big toe, and it's for fun. And it's to develop an opportunity to take ourselves much more lightly and have a bit of fun. So breathing comes and goes. Breathing comes and goes. Okay, well done, everyone. That's it. Bring your leg down. Catch your breath, because you're probably like me, tried quite hard. And as soon as you try, there's contraction, because the trying needs a trier, a person to do it. So let your breath come and go, come and go, come and go, until it's flowing and you feel looser. And if you're ready, or when you're ready, again, reach for your big toe, index finger, middle finger, and thumb, and it's wobbly fun. That's the category I put these poses under. A category, of course, that I've made up myself. And then if you want to counterbalance, you can. The leg turns out to the side. It's a great opportunity to develop balance. And what is balance? Well, it's letting go. Balance is a form of letting go. So you're sort of surrendering to the moment all the time, rather than grasping a preordained agenda. So we call that letting go. So surfers let go, and skiers let go, and and on and on. This is letting go. Breathing should be natural. Doing a great job. Return to center, foot down, loosen up a little or a lot. Now, for what we're going to do next, I'm going to recommend either a chair or a block, or even something lower. We did this pose in the class on Tuesday, I think. Something for your hands to come onto. So if you're not sure, have a chair, and you can always bring something lower. I'm going to go to one of my favorite things to go to, partly just to be silly, really, and that's the Kilner jars that are in our kitchen. This is the one that has peppermint tea. As you can see, it could do with a refill. It's almost empty. I must make a note of that. Anyway, you probably want something higher than that. I'm being a bit silly having that in a way. So a chair, seat, or a block, yoga block, because we're going to bring one leg up and cross it over the other above the knee. We're going to then bend the knee, and that should help to keep the upper leg in situ. And you're breathing into it. And for most people, there's already a little pull, a little stretch around the hip. And that's an important pull, an important stretch, and it's usually in the hands of a yogin. A little is enough. Yogins aren't known for their sort of, multiple Rolex watches. Well, maybe one famous yogin, but I'm not sure he's a yogin. Anyway, won't mention any names. Bikram Chowdhury. Okay. I think he's got Rolexes. Anyway, coming down in your own time. Nothing inherently wrong with Rolexes, of course, a very well-made watch. And you come, I've got my fingers on the Kilner jar, a little silly really, but you could have them on something firmer or higher, or both. Preferably, but definitely a firmer, and almost certainly higher as well. And then it's just breath. It's just breath. So this is actually a preparatory for Ekapada Galavasana, which is a rather silly pose in a sense, a balancing pose. We won't go into it today. Coming back up, take your time, catch your breath, land and breathe. Oh, really take some deep breaths like that, and stay loose and stay relaxed. and stay breath-centered and stay natural and become, in a sense, more easy, more natural. After a couple of breaths, then we're going to do the same on the other leg. You might loosen it a little first and then cross it over the other. If it's above the knee, when you bend the knee, then the leg's a little bit more supported by the fact that the leg is not entirely straight down, not entirely vertical. And then there's options to go to, say, here. The jaw stays passive. There should be no dukkha. Dukkha comes from a root dus, which means bad. Dukkha means bad space. So discomfort in the knee joint at all. There should be none at all. And to avoid it being in the knee, you have to let it absorb up into the hip. Take your own time to come down to wherever you come, perhaps fingertips. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft, throat soft, tongue soft. Honest, expressive, natural breathing. With the jaw soft, with the tongue soft. And again, no dukkha in the knee joint at all. So maybe don't come as low. Maybe don't come as quickly. You know, these things can help to avoid discomfort. Anyway, we're coming up calmly and slowly. When we're ready. Okay, wiggle out a little bit. We're going to come into Uttanasana, forward bend. And again, using your equipment, your block, or in my case, my rather silly Kilner jar. It's actually better to have, say, a couple of blocks. If you've got like the cork blocks, they work really well for this. Something higher, probably. Actually, it is okay for me to have this height, but for most of us, we need something higher. The feet should be hip width apart. The hands are on the hips. We look down at the feet and we check that they're not turning out or in. If we imagine the parallel alignment is through the middle of each foot, then we'll be on target, right? Imagine an engineer, right, coming to check. Perhaps one of the law boys could come and check. Well, only one of them, because the other one's doctor, but you could imagine an engineer coming to check the alignment and then stretch the arms, lightly tone, breathe through your nose, inhale, exhale, fold, and this is where your blocks are going to come into play, or chair or whatever, or my rather inadequate Kilner jar. And then you breathe. The idea of having blocks or something like that is that you really reiterate this openness along the anterior spine, this openness along the anterior spine. So openness meaning that the vertebral bodies, it's a bit of a posh way of saying the sort of spinal bones. You can imagine them stacked up with a little disc in between each one. The vertebral bodies don't compress forward, squashing the front face of those discs. So we keep the discs open, we keep the front spine open. And that's not just through to the tummy, but beyond to the pelvis, because don't forget that your sacrum is part of your spine and your tailbone is part of your spine too. So that whole area is open. Sometimes for some people, the hamstrings release and the myofascia releases through the back of the body, through time, and naturally the pelvis tilts and the spine goes along with it. Well, that's fine. That's just fine. But please let's not compress the anterior spine. Let's stay with our blocks for as long as they're of use. And that could be, of course, for, well, we don't know, however long, forever, is fine. For some, it's comfortable to hold the elbows. Now, if you want to come to this elbow position and you don't want to put pressure on the anterior spine, you could do this either by just not doing it, staying on the blocks, or coming into this position but with your knees a little bent. You won't get quite the same hamstring stretch, but you will get some of that nice release through the back.
So, you know, you have to make a choice. It's a win-win situation, right? So if you stay on the blocks, you can keep your legs straight. But if you come down and lose the blocks and hold your elbows, then you might need to bend the knees to keep the back as it should be, soft. Keep breathing deep, keep breathing honest. Now to come up, we're all going to come up the same way. So if your knees are bent, great, just bend them more. If they're not bent, bend them until your ribs touch your thighs. The ribs touch the thighs. And then with that softness in your back, bring your hands up onto your thighs, keep your knees bent, but straighten your arms. So you lock your elbows. That gives us all an opportunity to take a few breaths, to soften the eyes, to soften the brain, to soften the throat, to soften the tongue. Just to let the breath come and go. And eventually, we come up station by station, hopefully without any dizziness. Now we're going to come down to the floor. So as soon as you're ready, bring yourself down onto your back, actually. And laying on your back, you can have head support if you need it. I'm going to bring the other screen over so I can see you even when I'm laying down. So remember, if your head tips back, a head support is really sensible, because if the head tips back, the blood supply into the brain gets inhibited. That can cause us to space out, to drift off. So once you're on your back, taking some deep breaths, jaw soft, neck soft, breathing through the nose. Eyes relaxed as well. Good opportunity to let go, isn't it? To let go in the lumbar, to let go in the neck, to let go in the back. And while we're enjoying this letting go, we can actually trigger it a little bit more rapidly by bringing the feet up, and there's a little bit of extra push. The back actually pushes into the floor a bit more, but of course, the back doesn't move the floor. Hopefully your floor is more solid than your back. Otherwise, either your floor is something wrong with it or your back is something wrong with it. So it's that the floor pushes back into the back, and that releases some of the tensions as well. Now lift up and hug round your shins. Bring your head back down, keep your neck long. Breathe through your nose, and you can have a little roll about, which again promotes this massaging. Of course, we're very happy to accept the word massage without having ever really reflected on, well, what does it mean? You know, what's actually happening when we get a massage, if that's something you ever get. What's happening? Normally someone presses or they rub. There's some sort of pressure always going into the body. And of course, this helps to distribute lymph, which will help with the immune system. But also it helps to break down extraneous fascia. Fascia just builds up all the time. And if you're in certain positions more commonly than others, then the body will bias those positions by supporting us in those positions. But unfortunately, that means it might well limit us from other positions because the buildup of fascia. So it's useful to melt that because we want a range of movement, not only because we want to feel younger and you know, or young and loose, but also because of the way it helps things like blood pressure. Okay, we could roll around, I reckon, quite a while. I certainly could, and I think you're probably the same. We're going to pop our hands underneath our heads, fingers interlaced, breathing through the nose. Catch a few deep breaths with soft eyes. Keep the jaw passive. Let the lower back settle. And that's something nice in itself. The chest is stretched, the scapula, shoulder blades are deepened. Tension releases from the muscles in between the shoulder blades, the rhomboids, and so on. Lift up your feet. Open up the angle at the back of the knees and lift up your head. Opposite knee to opposite elbow. They don't have to reach each other. It's just the direction of travel. And then the other way. And we'll do it 3 times per side. And you can stay as long or as short as you like. This feels appropriate. Don't put any strain through the neck. Okay. And then once you've done your 3, which you might have already done, then you come down and take deep breaths. Again, plural, so several. Excuse me, deep breaths, deep breaths, natural. So it's like we're beginning to say yes. We're letting go of all the things that make us say no. Gripes and groans and little things that people have done to annoy us, and this incident and that incident, little things that perhaps we didn't deal with because they were too little. Someone said something that was a bit offensive, someone wasn't polite to us, someone didn't respect us fully, someone didn't recognize how we were or misunderstood us. All of this we pick up. The Jains are very clever because they talk about karma being like particles or like dust. Huh? And so we pick it up, and like any household, you do need to clear the dust every so often. I did a big house clean myself today. So I know all about that. Lift up the feet, lift up the head, elbows and knees towards each other. You can move where your hands are. They could be closer to the crown or nearer to the back of the head. Up to you. But you should breathe into it. Then head back down, feet back down. Everyone takes a deep breath. That should have helped a bit. Hopefully your breathing is flowing. Hopefully we're able to surrender, even for just another breath or 2. This wonderful sense of saying yes. Flex up again, lift up again, and they come towards each other again. Down you come. Same thing, deep breaths. We are going to do a 3rd, but not yet. Just give ourselves the opportunity to feel the breath flow. Really lovely. To surrender, yajna. Yajna is a very important concept in yoga. We find it first in the Vedas, then we find it reiterated in a different form in the Upanishads. You could say these are ancient Indian, they're definitely ancient Indian texts. You could say that they're yogic, although there's some discussion around whether the Vedas are explicitly yogic or not. Certainly some of the Upanishads are. Lift up your head. Last one. Again, make sure your neck's not uncomfortable. So your hands could be anywhere, crown of the head, back of the head, wherever. The pelvis can even come up. There's plenty of scope. There's loads of scope for free investigative movement. And then you come down again. And all take deep breaths. All take deep breaths. With the jaw soft, with the eyes soft, with the tongue soft, with the throat soft. Raise a leg and dorsi and plantar flex the foot, which is simple, isn't it? It's just pointing the toe, pushing the heel, pointing the toe, pushing the heel, like that. And you can do other movements, of course, that are appropriate to the very particular sensations that exist in each micro moment. The body, we call it the body, our body, my body, as if it were a sort of stable, unchanging thing. But my body, our bodies, change all the time. They change in very obvious ways as the years go by. You can look at photos of yourself, 7 years ago, and you think, oh Lord, I've changed. But that is coming from subtle change that's happening all the time. Now, when you're ready, heel in, toes out, in the leg over. Although some of you actually, I've noticed, you get better looking as you get older. You like good wine. It's nice, isn't it? Lift the foot that's on the floor off the floor and play in any way that's useful. For example, movements side to side help some people. I'm not saying you have to do that, but for some it's useful.
And then we're going to lift our head. So it's a little hybrid between the pose we did earlier, standing, and some of the poses we've been doing laying down. In Vajrasati yoga, I very much like to emphasize in Sanskrit, lila artha lakshana, play for the purpose of absorption, looking for signs of absorption like feeling absorbed. Okay, the head can come back down because that gets fatigued. And then the feet can come back down. Probably tucking under the buttocks a couple of times is useful. And then a few deep breaths. And of course, we're going to do the same sort of thing on the other leg. So playing with the foot, dorsi plantar, dorsi plantar, dorsi plantar. Playing with the whole movement of the leg, towards and away, and so on. Medial and lateral. And then turning the heel in and toes out, and cross that leg over the other. And then finally, if you're ready, lifting the foot that's on the floor off the floor. There's more scope for play. As I mentioned before, you could roll. Some people find that useful. You may or may not, so you don't have to do it. And then finally, the lifting the head and breathing easily. So look for a sense of flow in your breath, because then it means it's everywhere. Okay, well done. Head down, foot down, other foot down. Let's all take deep breaths together. You can imagine your exhales are saying, yeah, yeah, sure, yes, okay, I agree. So we know that's the Sanskrit word om, very similar to the words that are used in other traditions like amen, which we can interpret as so be it. We can also interpret om as so be it. Now release your hands from behind your head and roll over, come up from the side, and then we're going to give our legs a little hug. So how we're going to do that is lift up a foot and place, you might want to limber up a little first, place the foot in the crook of the opposite knee. Make sure not to twist the knee, so keep an open angle and make sure you don't distort the foot, so don't twist that. And so you can play with it, keep the open angle, that's important. Don't twist the foot and play. Again, it's worth saying that the more this is allowed to absorb into the hip, the more it will come out of the knee. But the problem is the hip often already is full. It's like having, I said I did my housework today. So it's like having a cloth that's got a lot of water in it. You can't absorb any more water. The hip is like that. It's often got stuff in it, like tensions and tightnesses and muscular actions. And these tensions and tightnesses and muscular actions are being driven by subconscious drivers. We call them samskaras in yoga. So those are conditioned by things that have happened to us, like the dust I mentioned earlier. So this is a way of doing your dusting. It's a lot of housework metaphors. Doing your dusting. Okay, well done. Release. Stretch out. Take a breath. Give your legs a little rub down. Maybe the buttocks. Maybe the feet. Whatever you need to. The face. So you feel alive. And then, of course, we're going to do the same on the other leg. So you can play any way that helps you to limber up. The ways that we play can be quite particular to ourselves, and we don't have to compare to what other people are doing. Apart from the vibe, if someone's kind of looking absorbed, yeah, we want to follow them, but it might not be the same action to get that same absorption. So same thing, the foot and the crook of the elbow, and then play. So remember, it won't come out of the knee into the hip if the hip won't let go. And a lot of the stuff we hold on to, there's a little, when we recognize it's there, we sometimes have a little reserve, like, aren't I supposed to be carrying stuff? Right? We have this sense, I'm supposed to be carrying stuff. In fact, doesn't the stuff I carry define who I am? Right? We often think like that. What if I let go of the stuff, who would I be? Well, happy, empty, spacious. Sometimes we even hold problems because we think, I can't let go of that problem, I've got to sort it out. But there's no problem to sort out if you've let go of it. You see? So Buddhists emphasize emptiness. Emptiness. And that's a blessed relief, because we're conditioned to think full, get things, you know. Even some people have translated some words from Buddhism as mindfulness. What a shame. Mind emptiness that really Buddhists encourage. Huh? Okay, well done. Slow and easy release. Take your time. Stretch out your legs. Draw the buttock press out and back. Little energy bar everywhere. So you really distribute that energy everywhere that you can. And we're going to come into a seated forward bend. Now you probably need a block under your bum, and you're probably going to need a belt as well. Partly depends on dimensions. People with long legs, it's much harder to reach the feet because they're much further away. So having a belt is sensible. But also if your hamstrings are a bit tight, obviously if your pelvis doesn't tilt forwards, you don't get as close. If you see my pelvis tilting forwards, if it keeps tilting, my arms get really close. But if it doesn't tilt, then I don't get close, and I try to close my body. No, we don't want that. So belt or not, most people probably yes. Sitting on a block, probably but not definitely. You can tell if you need a block or not by sitting without a block. Drawing the buttock out and back, bringing your hands by your hips and just seeing if you can feel a bit of lightness in the lumbar, right? The lower back. If you're not sure if there's any lightness there, then there isn't. And if you know there isn't, then there isn't. And that's when you definitely need a block, right? Or even two. For some people, if you take 2 blocks, you might need a little support under the knees. Okay, now inhale, lift up. Exhale, extend forwards, tilt from the pelvis. Here's where you bring the belt, right? So the pelvis might have tilted hardly at all. In fact, it might have only tilted to the upright. If your pelvis started off back like this, progress means coming forwards. So sitting up is progress, isn't it? From here to here is progress. Further doesn't mean better, right? We're just looking for progress because the release in our bodies is the release of the samskaras. It's dropping karmic particles, using the language of the Jains. More correctly pronounced if you're using the Sanskrit pronunciation of Jainas, because it's spelled J-A-I, the phonemes are J-R-E, Jaina. But in Hindi, often the last A is dropped off a Sanskrit term. So you get Jain, and then anglicized it becomes Jain. Anyway, that's a bit about the Jains. Breathing easy, little movements can help. Closing your eyes can help to focus on that which we should be focused on, which is the subtle releases in the body, mind, and breath. And this pose is such a wonderful opportunity to let go of grasping. A friend of mine, a studio owner in London, in Brixton, he came into the studio last week, and he's very chipper anyway. He's a lovely human being, but he was extra chipper And I said, hey, brother, hey, Vajrasati, what's going on? You seem really happy. And he said, oh, it was my birthday last week. And I turned 60 and he got his bus pass, so he was pleased about that. But he said, I feel like I can finally let go, and he felt so happy. So that's a really nice thing, isn't it? Letting go. And Vajrasatin's a Buddhist, so, letting go is not easy. And sometimes we need a reason or an excuse, But actually it's what brings tremendous joy. Okay, now we can keep playing with this, but we'll come up and we're going to come into our Adho Mukha Svanasana. Of course, that's downward facing dog. So if you come onto your hands and knees when you're ready, check your hands are equidistant from the front and the sides of the mat. Make sure your middle fingers both face the same way as each other, which should be forwards. Spread your fingers generously and enjoy the tuning in. Because, even the palms of your hands hold tension, and that tension causes resistance. Part of the definition of self is resistance. So we let go of that. The palms merge with the mat, like the molecules merge with the mat. The muscles release. Obviously, the lymph flows better, and there's more fluidity within the fascia. Blood pressure is better regulated. Okay, when you're ready, lift up into your Adho Mukha Svanasana. So we're this sense of merging the palms into the mat. It's a really nice feeling, merging the palms into the mat. Now, of course, if you've checked your hands are equidistant, it would be foolhardy not to check your feet as well. Now, they don't have to be the same distance as the hands, but they should be the same distance as each other. You might be bending your knees, you might be moving your pelvis side to side. These movements aren't idle and they're not habituated, or at least they shouldn't be. They're meditative. They're for the purpose of dissolution, layanam. Dissolution means the dissolving of concepts of separation that are purely conceptual. I'm not saying they're not useful, but they're, I was speaking to someone on the phone today. He was in Oxford Street, London, and he was saying, I don't subscribe to this idea. He was a psychologist. I don't subscribe to this idea that the body and the mind are something different, I was very glad to hear him saying that. Okay, coming down to kneeling position. Okay, sitting up. Catching a breath. Of course you can and should put a block between the heels and buttocks if you're, excuse me, tight. If you're tight in the knees, then you must put some support there. It's really important. Breathing is nasal, eyes are soft, brain is relaxed. This is Vajrasati. Very important pose, very lovely pose. The anterior tibialis or tibialis anterior on the front of the tibia, as you might guess, tibia is the name of the bone, anterior is where the muscle is on the front. It doesn't get much opportunity to get massaged, but it's getting an opportunity now. And like any other muscle area, it will benefit from massage. Breath coming and going. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft, brain soft, tongue soft. Okay, release your hands. And we're going to stretch out our legs. We're going to come to a pose that's really, really, really popular with hardly any people. So That's one of my jokes. You can buy the Jim Tarran book of jokes for your family for Christmas. It's handwritten and it costs 99p. Anyway, so you're going to draw the butterfish out and back. You can't buy it, but maybe one year. Anyway, you're going to draw the butterfly on back, although you don't particularly need to be honest, for this, because we're going to come into Ardha Navasana. So we're going to bring our hands behind our heads. We're going to roll the body back. We're going to roll it back. And as it rolls back, the feet can come up. They get pulled up at a certain point. Ideally, you bring your toes to the same height as your eyes. Doesn't always work out that way. Trembling is allowed. Breathing is encouraged. This is Ardha, half, Nava, boat. And then Asana means seat, or it's come to mean posture. Bend your knees, hug your legs, lift your chest, catch deep breaths, and move investigatively, playfully, breath-centeredly, side to side, with soft eyes and a soft brain, soft throat and soft tongue. Okay, so everything flows. So that's Ardha Navasana, half boat. I know what you're thinking. I hope Jim takes us through full boat. All right, let's do it. Stretch the legs out. Okay, lean the body back, this time only by 30 degrees and your legs go up. Oh my Lord, that's a long way. By 60 degrees. Now, you can do this with bent knees if you need to. Not entirely cruel. And you breathe into it. I think, as I remember in the Light on Yoga, BKS Iyengar says that students should stay for 1 minute. It's a little bit cruel, but let's see how we go. We're probably over 30 seconds, I should think. Very hard to smile in this pose. Breathe into it. Okay, bend your knees, hug your legs, lift up. That's the rectus femoris you probably felt burning there. One of the quadricep muscles, but the only one of the quadricep muscles that's postural. That is, it supports us on a sort of long-term basis, sort of throughout the day, constantly, in our standing up. So we're just taking a few breaths. Okay. Now from here, it'll be ever so sad to hear we're not going to do any more of those, but we're going to bring ourselves forwards onto our forearms. And as if we're holding bunches of flowers or sprigs of holly or perhaps mistletoe. I quite like Christmas. Stretching the legs back. I particularly like the run up to Christmas. I like this bit. I like fairy lights. I like candles. I like Christmas trees in houses. I like goodwill to all men. I like that. I love mince pies. The list goes on. Anyway, I hope you like some elements of it, if not all. So playing, breathing, jaw soft. Here we're sharing. That's a sort of Christmas spirit thing, isn't it? Goodwill to all people. Sharing through the belly, lateral, medial, superficial, deep. Okay, well done. That's probably enough. Coming up to hands and knees and catching your breath. Because that really brings the abdominals into play. This time of year, it's very tempting to hide the body underneath layers and layers of clothes and kind of forget about it and just cram chocolates and mince pies and things into it. But I think we do need to keep our yoga up. We really do. So that the body stays vital, because that's what makes us feel happy and well. Now we're going to come from the hands and knees actually down to laying on our tummies. So join me, if you will, propped up on your elbows. So laying on your tummy, propped up on your elbows. And that's an opportunity to just loosen off your back, to stretch your back a little bit. So your pelvis might move side to side. You might stretch your tummy, lateral, medial. Breath is everything. And then you might stretch your legs back. Well, in fact, you should. don't know why I said you might. Stretch your legs back, stretch the groins back, take a few breaths. So we're preparing by stretching the psoas out. We're getting some length in the psoas. Huh? So if we think about the psoas, we are understand that it's in the deep belly, attaches to the sides of the lower spine. And it also goes down to the top of the inner thigh, obviously through the pelvis. So if you consider just that area of the body that you're stretching the muscle, and that's why we stretch in two directions, the lower end using the legs, the upper end using the forearm. Now, once you've got some looseness, stretch your arms back and thumbs on the floor and breathe easy. Try to avoid turning your heels in. The gluteal muscles they do function as synergists with the hamstrings. They work together to lift the legs up. But there are some fibers of the gluteus maximus that externally rotate the legs. We don't want those on. So lift the legs up, but don't turn the heels in. Keep your thumbs on the floor and breathe easy. Breathe through the nose. Find the pelvic floor, raise your arms up. This, of course, is Shalabhasana. Keen awareness of the central channel of the body, starting at the pelvic floor and moving anteriorly across the front of the spine, even through the neck, even through the skull. And we want to feel not just awareness of it, but that it's flowing. Okay, well done. One hand on top of the other, rest your head on your hands and take some deep breaths. Take a few deep breaths. So the breath is really lovely. It's a lovely opportunity, isn't it, to lay here together. Just giving yourself over. I don't know if you're like this, but when I work on a computer, which I do quite a bit, I have little sneaky breaks. And when I have sneaky breaks, I usually watch something to do with music. So today in a sneaky break, I watched the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because I quite like them. Red Hot Chili Peppers, particularly Flea accepting an award. And he said, when I play music, he said, I feel completely free. He said, all my problems, all my worries, he said, and I'm sure it's true for people in other fields, but I'm talking to musicians here, so I'm talking about music. And it really struck me. I was like, well, he's exactly right. He's exactly right. And he said, my life's devoted to freedom. Good for you, Flea. Now, roll onto your side and bend the leg you're laying on. Breathing easy. So the leg you're laying on is bent to 90 degrees. So giving yourself, I mean, if you've ever seen the Red Hot Chili Peppers play, Flea really does give himself, doesn't he? I'm not sure how his neck survives, but anyway, perhaps because he has the strength that you get when you're given. Stretch the inner groin, lightly tone the tummy, press, lift, turn, elbows, forearms, wrists. Catch the deep breath, catch deep breaths, plural. Jaw soft, and then just playing forwards, backwards, left, right. And the purpose is to do what Flea does when he plays, to disappear. To just, to let this absorb, I'm sure he would understand it, yogic language. If I said about being absorbed in the goddess, he'd be, oh yeah, that's right, Music's his religion. Other people have different religions, but the same goal, And some people have no religion, but they still value surrender. Perhaps they're artists or chefs, or they like going running, or just going for a walk on their own, and disappearing into nature. That's kind of spiritual practice. Top leg on top of the bottom leg come up. And ovs. Side 2. Bend the leg you're laying on. 90 degrees between calf and thigh. 90 degrees between thigh and tum. Extend the psoas. Right? Which is something that one needs to be a meditator, I think, to get the sort of the selflessness. that Flea really, really enjoys. He was slightly crying when he was saying it. I thought it was very beautiful, actually. Tone the tummy, push, lift, turn. Elbows, forearms, and wrists. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft, throat soft. Breathing deep, breathing honest, breathing natural. I'll see if I can find that little clip. And for those of you that follow me on social media, I'll put it up on social media because it's really lovely. Top leg on top of the bottom leg, just curl up to come up from the side. And as we so often do, we're going to take our penultimate pose as Sidasana. So that is often best done on a block, a brick block if you've got it, but you can use a regular block or two turned the other way. But a brick block is optimal. But if you haven't got a brick block, you can use one or two just to prove the point, really. I'll do the same. You can use a block turned the other way if you haven't got a brick block. Heels align with each other. Good job. Siddha. This is called Sidasana. So a Siddha is someone who's accomplished, a yogin, you could say. I have heard some yoga teachers saying, not trying to get anywhere, there's nothing to achieve. Well, that's not how the yoga tradition talks at all. It talks about siddhas, people who have achieved, accomplished. The Buddha's name, for example, was Siddhartha. He's accomplished his purpose, Siddha, Artha plus Artha. The point is, what is that purpose? To fall into the arms of the goddess, to disappear completely into the music, to forget, how old you are or what gender you are or what your marital status is or what your job is or isn't, or any whether you're a parent, grandparent, daughter, son, uncle, auntie. When you go for a walk, sometimes nature just sucks you into her and you disappear. Or if you play music, the music sucks you into her and you disappear. And you re-arrive in completely free, magnificently free. It's magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. In churches, they try to foster this with singing. People sing, don't they? And they say things together, encouraging a sense of togetherness beyond the separate self. Bring your hands to the heart and we'll chant together 3 times, yes, put in Sanskrit. And that, of course, is Om. Where imagine that Om is moving up through the central channel and out of the crown of the head each time we do it. Really nasalize the last part that's represented with an M with a dot underneath it, but it represents nasal. So all nasals, are by their nature, have that nasal sound. But we're going to make it really emphasize it. So nasals, are represented usually in English only by M and N. But actually, we say lots of different nasals as a result of that. So 3 times together, Om, through the central channel. Take a deep breath in. Two more. And the last one. And then you take deep breaths at the end of that, several. They flow. The yogin feels like she's laying in, like the Red Sea or something, floating, supported, given, relaxed, comfortable, freed of her burdens, freed of the sort of becoming or not becoming. She's dropped her karmic baggage, as it were. She's released her karmic particles. Huh? She's light, she's lagu, or he's light, he's lagu. Unencumbered, unfettered. The state of yoga is a state of openness. Release your hands. We're going to lay down on our backs for Shavasana, also known as Mritasana. Make sure you're warm. If you're in the UK, it's December. So put on a blanket. One of my students at the Buddhist Center, I don't know where he got it from. He suddenly produced this hot water bottle in corpse pose the other day. Dan, how did he do that? Anyway, it's quite a nice thing to have. I've done a few one-to-ones when I've got people to use hot water bottles on the body. Although I haven't done one-to-ones for a while now, for several reasons. Laying on your back, getting comfy, getting cozy, making sure you're symmetrical, eye pillows on, those of you who got them, it's nice. Palms facing up, shoulder blades scoot under, hands away from the yoga mat. Giving yourself to a piece of music, giving yourself to a hug, giving yourself to gravity, giving yourself to the total sensory experience of a walk in nature. As you give yourself, you find yourself absolutely freed. Freed of your problems. Deep, natural, total surrender. Every cell says yes to this moment. Now you're at home, which is great, so you can lay as long as you like. But if you're ready to come up, then the fingers and toes wiggle a little bit, and we take quite enjoyable little stretches into the body. And this could be instructions for in a few minutes, you know, it doesn't have to be now. And then the legs will bend and the feet will come onto the floor. And when you feel ready, you might roll to your left side first and lay comfortably there with the knees drawn up. And then, of course, you spend a little while there before feeling happy and ready to roll again to the other side. Taking your own time to stretch out, to rub your eyes or stretch out an arm or a leg or whatever you need to do. When you feel ready to come up, you bring yourself up easily from the side, but it might not be yet, just when you need, when you want. Apologies for